G'day from Australia. My name is Ashley Davis. Welcome to my coding live stream. As well as live streaming this, I'm recording it and it will be available on YouTube later for anyone who couldn't make the live stream. I'm going to be building an application. It's going to take multiple sessions, but we're going to build it from scratch and you're going to see exactly how it goes at each step of the way. I'm going to do my best to explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it at the same time that I'm doing it. Please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I love getting feedback. You can see my Twitter handle on the screen at all times. Now, because this is live, things can go wrong, and really that's part of the fun of it. And it's totally okay because, when you're coding for real, things do go wrong. And, in fact, coding it's always a series of problems that we must overcome, and you're going to get to see how I handle them. Before we get to coding, though, I want to start with a tradition that we have here in Australia. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm broadcasting. So I'm writing a book called Rapid Full-Stack Development, and this series of live streams is really to support the book. In this book, I want to show you how to be a faster developer. We don't become faster just by coding more quickly, though. That's only going to get you so far. You become faster by producing more reliable code. That's going to mean that you spend less time debugging it and fixing it. We also become faster by writing more valuable code. And that means you're going to spend less time working on code that you're eventually going to throw away. Let me show you the example application that we're going to be building. You can actually see this page yourself under rapidfullstackdevelopment.com/example application. The application is called Photosphere. So it's an application to be able to kind of upload and store our photos and videos and be able to view our collection of these in a gallery. It's going to take quite a few sessions, many sessions in fact, to complete Photosphere. Today we're just starting with a simple monolithic backend using Node.js and JavaScript. So that's this part of it here, the backend. Later on, of course, we're going to add some microservices. This is a fair way down the track. We're going to do various front ends. So we're going to do a web-based front end. We're going to build a desktop application using Electron, and we're going to build a mobile application using Ionic. So that's what's to come in the future. But at the moment, we're really just starting simple with a simple monolithic backend. We're building what's called a REST API, and you're going to be able to upload your photos to it or your videos. You're going to be able to kind of get the assets back from it, and you're going to be able to list all the assets that you've uploaded previously. I'm going to be using Git to create a code repository and commit the code, and the code will be available basically immediately on the open source code repository that you're going to watch me create today. So the code will be out there straight away, and you can start playing with it immediately. So that's the point of this. Is at the end of each session, you'll be able to grab the code and take a look at it for yourself, have a play with it, try to break it, try to add some stuff to it, whatever you want. So why am I doing this? It's always important to ask this question, why? And part of the book I'm writing is to help you, figure out where's the best place to invest your time while coding. You want to be able to write more valuable code. So you have to ask yourself this question, why? Why am I doing this? What is the end goal? What is the purpose of it? Well, for one thing, I need to write this example application because I need example code for my book, Rapid Full Stack Development. And the purpose of the example application for the book is that it's a vehicle that I'm going to use to teach you good development habits. I'm using it to teach techniques for fast and efficient development. So, this example application, even though it's relatively small, it's designed to have a bit of everything. It's supposed to be a small microcosm of the development experience. And if you like what you're hearing in this video, then you're going to love my book, Rapid Full Stack Development. We're going to go into it in a lot more detail. Now, the other thing is I do actually want to build this example application for myself. I do want a better way to manage my own assets, my own photos, and my own videos. And so this is a real project for me because I want a better way to manage my assets. Now, I'm going to also continue to develop this application after I finish writing the book, and it will continue to be an open source project. So you can You can follow with me in these initial days where I'm putting it together, the basic part of the application, and then you can follow me in the future if you like, because it's going to be open source. Okay, I've got a quick diagram here of what we're going to be building, or what we're starting to build today. So this is a diagram of what the back end looks like, and I've also shown here that it's connected to the front end. So we're not doing the front end today. That'll be in a future live stream. But you can see here that there's a front end connected to a back end, and these are basically user stories. So these are the initial stories of what we want to be able to do with this Photosphere application. We want to be able to upload photos. We want to be able to view a particular photo. We want to be able to view all the photos as a gallery. To upload a photo, we're going to build into our backend a HTTP post route handler where we can upload an asset. We want to be able to retrieve an asset later as well. So we're going to have a HTTP get handler that allows us to retrieve an asset by ID. And we want a HTTP get route where we can retrieve a list of all the assets that we've so far uploaded into our backend. I'm going to put that to the side for 1 minute. We can refer back to that again later if we need to. So I've got a terminal open here. I'm running Windows 11. Most of what I show you is going to work on Linux and Mac as well, so don't be too worried. In fact, I have Linux commands like ls already installed because I have Git for Windows installed. So most of what I show you is going to work on all platforms, and if not, I'm going to tell you when it doesn't. I am using Node.js version 16.14.0. You're going to need to grab Node.js for yourself if you want to follow along with the code. I'm using a slightly older version of Git, 2.30.2. It's moved on a little bit from there, but it doesn't really matter because Git's very stable. I've also got a fairly recently updated version of Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is the editor that I'm going to be using to edit my code. Well, initially create my project, add code to it, and then later be editing that code. I'm going to create a directory here for my project. So I've created a directory. If you're on Mac OS or Linux, I think it's mkdir to make the directory. On Windows, it's md for make dir. So going into that directory, let's get to coding. I'm going to open Visual Studio Code from this directory here. I've got an empty project here with Visual Studio Code. I'm going to put my terminal window side by side with Visual Studio Code. I'll work like this quite a bit so you can see what I'm doing. As I'm coding, you're going to be able to see the results of that code coming up straight away in the terminal, or later on when we're doing the front end, the results will come up straight away in the browser. Note that I don't always work on a laptop, so you don't get a lot of screen real estate on a laptop to do this kind of thing. Normally I work on a desktop computer with 3 screens, and one of them is an ultra wide. So 2 screens, but one of them is an ultra wide, so it's effectively 3 screens. And that gives you a lot of screen real estate to play with, to have multiple things open. You can be coding, looking at output, looking at automated tests, reading documentation all at the same time. But I have to make do with a laptop because it's sort of the best platform to do the live streaming on. Now, I think the first thing I want to do here is kind of make a to-do list. I've done a fair bit of planning for this already, as you might imagine. So, I've thought about it for a long time. I've written my own user stories. I've made diagrams. I've in fact written this to-do list before, which is why I can just cut and paste it now into the window here. So the important thing anyway, before you get to coding, is you've got to do a bit of thinking. You've got to do a bit of planning. And every time you sit down to do some coding, you should be rethinking what you're doing. We're only just getting started. So I just want to get an initial to-do list down. And that is, initially I want to create the project, create the code repo. I'm going to publish it straight away. And then I'm going to build the REST API. This isn't going to happen all in this session. I'm going to go through this as far as I can today. And then we're going to pack up and we're going to come back to it tomorrow. So I'm building a REST API. I'm just going to start with a Hello World application, basically, to be sure that that's working and I can get a web server running. Then I'm going to work on the API for uploading an asset. I'm going to work on the API for retrieving an asset. At this point, I'm going to do that super simple to start with. One of the things that you'll see with the way I work is that I'm always just looking for the next simplest way to move forward. That's it. Like, even though I might have something really complicated to do involving, multiple things, I'm always looking for the next simplest thing to do. So these two first bits really in building the REST API, I'm going to do them real simple, and then I'm going to come back afterwards. I'm going to refactor them, and you'll see how that pans out. Finally, I'm going to add the REST API to get a list of all the projects. I don't know what that last thing is there. We don't need that. So that's it. This is all that's required for the moment for our simple monolithic backend. And of course, we're going to worry about things like front ends later in future live streams. Today, we're just going to build this real simple backend. Okay, so I'm going to create the like a stub application now. So I use the npm command that comes with Node.js init, and if I do a -y, it means I just don't have to answer any interactive questions. This is going to generate like an empty Node.js project for me. So starting with nothing here, there was nothing in this directory. I added a to-do. Now I'm generating a project. So that shows you the package.json file that it's generated. You can see that it's appeared over here. In fact, I better zoom this in. Probably can't see that. So you can see here, anyway, my project in Visual Studio Code, I've got a package.json file now. It's just an empty package file. There's nothing interesting in here yet. I'll just change the license to MIT because that's how I usually release my code. Now I can basically I just want to get, to start with, I just want to get a hello world application off. I mean, that's always a good starting point, right? Just to know. So I'll make an index.js. I'm just going to do a console.log hello world. Console.log is your like absolute best friend in the world. It's like the best tool for understanding what is going on in your code. The next level up from that is using a real debugger in Visual Studio Code, but I'm not going to worry about covering that today. So I should be able to run this, right? Hello world. So I just ran it. I ran my script. My entry point is called index.js, which is a conventional name for an entry point for a program printing hello world. So that's the most simplest possible Node.js program. I'm just going to do a small bit of refactoring to start with, and I'm going to just pop that into the source directory. So I just want to keep all my source code together, even though there's not going to be much in this project really. Now to run it, I have to kind of prefix it with source/index. Make sure you use / if you're on Linux or Mac. So I can still run it. Every time you do a refactor, no matter how small, you got to test. You got to make sure your code still works, because believe me, if you refactor without testing, it will be broken. So this is the world's simplest Node.js project. I'm going to commit this. I'm going to create a Git repo and commit this now. You might think it's too early, but you know, committing stuff when it works is a big part of my coding philosophy. So as soon as you've got some sort of working code, and maybe this is slightly too early, but I'm just trying to exaggerate it a little bit just to demonstrate. Commit as often as you have working code. I have working code. I'm going to initialize my repo. So I've got Git installed. I'll do a Git init to create a repo here. I'll just maximize this so you can see it all. If I do a Git status, you'll see that I've got a couple of things here to commit. I'm not gonna add the to do. So what I'll do, I don't want to have that cluttering up the code repo. So I will add a .git ignore file here, and I will add. I'm telling Git to ignore the to do file is what I'm doing here. So I'm adding that to my Git ignore. If I do a Git status now, you'll see to do is gone, and we have a Git ignore file. So my to do list, I'm not committing that. Like normally I would put my to do list somewhere else anyway. Like if I was working in my normal job, I'd be using Jira or something like that. So I wouldn't normally have the to-do list in the code repo anyway. I'm just putting it there just because it's convenient, and I'm adding it to the ignore file just so I don't accidentally clutter it up. So I'm adding. So I should have a bunch of things. I've got a bunch of new files staged, ready to be committed, and now I'm going to commit those with a message of fledgling Node.js project. Now, I am going to take this opportunity actually just to while you're watching, I'm going to open source this. I'm going to actually put this on GitHub, and I'll try and push this a couple of times during, if I remember, during the live stream, so you can actually get updated code if you're that keen. So I've already created an organization on GitHub called Rapid Fullstack Development. Here. There's nothing there yet. It's saying create a new repository. So there's no repos yet. This is where I'm going to put all the code for the book, Rapid Full Stack Development, and all the code that I developed during live streams as well. I'm going to create a new repository here. I'm going to give it the same name. So let's just put it side by side to Visual Studio Code. And Photosphere monolithic backend live stream. It's a big name, but I'm just trying to keep it really clear like what this is. And write a nice description. Live streamed development of the Photosphere monolithic backend. Spelling issue there. I'll make it public so everyone can see it. I'm not going to enable anything there. You'll see why. So if I click the create repository, you'll see here that it gives you instructions for getting your code into the repository. What I usually use is the instructions here, push an existing repository. So I just created a repository from the command line. So I want to push an existing repository from the command line. So I can literally I'll just copy these one by one so you can see what I'm doing. So the first line of command there, that adds the remote repo to my local repo, making sure that I've got the branch set up correctly as main. And now I'm going to push my local branch to that remote. So that's up there now. You can actually clone this repo. If I refresh the repository here in GitHub, you'll see there's some code here. So there's the source directory that I added. If you look under there, you'll see index.js. My code is there. I should have a README. I'm going to add a README to this later, probably after the live stream, so you don't have to watch me typing that out. All projects should have a README, of course, that explain how you get into it, how you get started, what do you got to do to run this thing. Very, very important to have a README. I'm going to add that pretty soon after this live stream. So that's a good starting point. Now, now that I've created the repo and I've connected my local repo to the repo on GitHub, I can just do a git push whenever I want, and any changes that are there will go up. Of course, I haven't made any changes yet. I'm about to, and I'll show you that. Okay, I just want to implement a few of the common conventions that we use with Node.js before I get into the real coding here. I might just have to make this a little bit bigger. See what we're doing. So in the package.json, first thing I want to do is I want to add a start command. Now this basically allows us to remember what is the command that starts this project. Well, it's going to be node and source/index.js. I'll better make sure this kind of entry point here is correct as well, just in case we need that. So now if I go back to here, I should be able to run Npm Start. And that is what runs our Hello World application. So this Npm Start is the conventional way to start a Node.js application. And it doesn't matter what the name of the entry point is. It doesn't matter what the name of the script is. It doesn't matter what command line arguments you might have to pass to it. However it starts, Npm Start is the conventional kind of easy way to start it. Now I have another thing that I like to do, which is a script called start dev. And that's a script that will basically start the application in development mode with live reload enabled. So when we've got live reload enabled, it means we can keep our application running, and anytime we make changes to the code, the application will automatically restart. It's a really great way of getting fast feedback while you're working, and that's one of the main ways you can become a faster developer, actually. It's finding faster ways to check whether your code's working. So if you can check quickly if your code's working, you can really speed up your process. But now I need a little bit of help now, so we can't just do this with Node. We probably could, but it'd be difficult. So we can install a package from the npm or the Node package repository to help us get live reload working, and that is npm install. I'm saving it for development only because it's only something I need in development, not in production. NodeMon. It's node monitor is basically what it means. So this will allow us to basically, it's like a drop-in replacement for Node, where we can run our script file against it, and whenever our code changes, it's automatically going to restart it. So when I say it's a drop-in replacement for Node.js, I'll add it to the script here. all I need to do from my original command line, node source index.js, is to replace it with nodemon. Oops, I've accidentally, this is one of those problems that you see in live streams, I've accidentally updated my package.json, and it's also been updated while I was installing it. So what I need to do is just save that, because I don't want to lose that work. I'm going to save that. I'm going to close package.json. Not going to save it. So if I load it again, you'll see that nodemon's been added to the div. So it added that while I was trying to edit it. But that's in there now. So I've got my save dev. Now I can do an npm run save dev, start dev, and I'm running it in live reload mode now, if that has worked to plan. So you can see there, it's run it, it's printed hello world. It's waiting for changes before restart. So I can actually change this now. I'll change it to my favorite hello computer. And you can see here it's restarted. It says it's restarted due to changes. And now it's printed out hello computer. So we've got a setup here for live reload. So I can just code and this will automatically restart every time I change the code, which is just a really fluid, fast way of working. Now, another thing that I like to do just for convenience, I'm not really going to use it in the live stream, I just thought I'd show you, is I like to create aliases for the commands that I'm using frequently. And so, this typing npm run all the time, even though we've got live reload and we don't have to type it as much, it does get quite painful. So on Mac OS and Linux, you've got the alias command. You can use that to create an alias. On Windows, I like to add a little batch file called R. And in that batch file, I run npm run npm run %1. So %1 is the first argument that's passed to the batch file. It's going to get passed to npm run. So now I can do R, say start. So this is going to do that whole thing for me, or R start dev. So it's just a little bit more convenient than typing npm run, just a little bit. And another thing I like to do is actually have aliases for my scripts here as well. So I can add an S alias for start, and that could be npm run start. And I can have a SD alias for start dev, or these can be whatever you want, really. Start, this is the only conventional one. Start is the only conventional one. Everything else can be whatever you want it to be. There's no particular good reason for these names. Anyway, so I'm going to run it again now, and I can run rs for doing an npm start. Good stuff. Or running in development mode, I can run an rsd. So I'm not going to use that during the live stream because it is going to get a little bit confusing for you probably if I'm doing RSs and RSDs. It's probably going to be much more understandable if I type the full command. So that's actually what I'm going to be using from now on in the live stream. But I just thought I'd show you that the way that I use aliases, because it just makes typing the commands just that much quicker and that much easier. Cool. I'm gonna commit this now. So I could do a git status. Could do what I want to do actually. What I really want to do is a diff. Show you how to do that from a command line first. So one of the most important things in development is doing a self-review, like reviewing your own code changes before you commit. Make sure that you're not committing anything, any bugs that you can see or anything that's just ridiculously stupid. So this is the easiest way I know to stop yourself committing embarrassing mistakes to version control. It's just using git diff, right? So I want to look at source/index, and it shows me I've changed hello world to hello computer. So I'm just doing a visual verification on the thing that I've changed here. You want to do this for your whole project, by the way. So you can do a git diff by itself to kind of show you changes across every file. This is a little bit hard to read. I will understand if you don't want to do this because it is a little bit hard to read. But this is one of the main reasons that I often use a GUI for dealing with Git and dealing with version control. So I'm using a user interface called fork. There's a few of these sort of things out there. So this is fork. I'm just going to open my repository in fork. So there's my repository that I've just created. I'm going to open that in fork. And you can kind of see here all the commits that have been done so far. There's only been one commit. I'll zoom this in a little bit. So there's been one commit, the fledgling Node.js project. Well, there's a lot of changes. Now, most of these are just node modules, so we don't want to commit node modules. They're the kind of things that you install when you get a project from source control. We could ignore that from here. So ignore all files in node modules. So that's just going to add this pattern here, node modules, to our git ignore file, the one that I showed you before. So if I add that, you can see we've got an update to git ignore here. We've added node modules to it. Now, the thing I like about fork is that it is really easy to kind of see changes, to see what files you've changed, and to see the differences in the files that you've changed. So it's really easy to kind of verify your own commits, and you can say, oh, look, I changed this from hello world to hello computer. I didn't mean to do that. I'm just going to discard that. Like, I didn't really want to commit that. So discard the file. I don't really want that. What I really want is the r.bat and the changes to package.json, where I kind of installed NodeMon and I put in my other scripts there and my aliases. This is sort of almost complete project setup, really. It's the starting point for my application. So I'm just going to commit that. Push him. So this idea of doing a kind of a self-review and a commit, it's really important to kind of, stop yourself committing bugs, stop yourself committing embarrassing mistakes. I'll show you more of that as we go. Now, we're almost out of time in this live stream session today. I'm just going to get a basic Express web server up and running. That's the last thing I'm going to do. And then I'm going to tie it off for today, and we'll come back to it tomorrow. So Express is a real great, as they say, minimalist web framework for Node.js. It's simple, pretty easy to understand. It's kind of the de facto standard for Node.js, I would say. Even though there's some good options or good alternatives available now, this is a great way for me to, it's a great vehicle for really kind of doing this thing, doing live streaming, just because it's so simple. Now, of course, we could do anything that we're going to do with Express. We could just do it with the low-level Node.js APIs. But the benefit of using something like Express is it just makes it that little bit much more easier. I always like to start my working with Express just by copying the Hello World example. So I just go to the Express.js website, go to the Hello World example, copy that code, and I'm going to put that in my project in index.js. This should almost get me a working project. Of course, the problem is now is I don't actually have Express installed. Let's try running it. I mean, I'm just going to try running it. You will see a problem. Like, it's going to complain that Express is a missing module or something like that. Module not found. There we go. So, it doesn't like the fact that it can't find Express. Sometimes it's good to cause errors. Like, if you know that there could be a problem, cause the error. Like, see what happens. This is the great way to kind of reduce your fear of errors and mistakes and problems and stuff like that, is just to cause them on purpose and see what happens, and make sure you understand like how to read this kind of call stack and where the problem is coming from. And especially because this is a simple project already, right? So it should be easy to kind of, and we know because we caused the problem, we know. Now, I'm not going to install the normal version of Express here. I need to install, I want to install the version 5 beta. Now, the reason for that is so that I can have later on, that I can have async route handlers. Now, when we come to that, probably in the next session, I'll show you what that means, and I'll remind you why we're using Express version 5, the beta of version 5. I should have something working here. If I run Npm Start, I should have a little web server that prints out hello world when we go to this root route here. So it's serving up on port 3000. With a bit of luck, I don't have anything else running on port 3000. Otherwise, it's going to be embarrassing. Here we go. So that's what I expected. Hello world. One thing about development is I believe it's a series of kind of experimentations, like hypothesis, then testing the hypothesis. You should always be making predictions about what's going to happen. Like I predict that I'm going to get a web server running on port 3000 that prints hello world, and then ta-da, that's what happens. Doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes you don't get what you predict because you've made a mistake or there's a bug or you've stuffed something up somehow. But you know I think that's the way to get better as a developer as well, is to make those predictions. And when the predictions don't come out as you expected they would, that's a learning opportunity. That's an opportunity to learn, you know, how to get it the way you want it quicker. So let's just get this committed. Got a basic thing up and running, a basic REST API, not really a REST API, basic web server. I don't know if you'd really consider a REST API yet. It will be one soon. I promise you next session we will get some of these APIs in there. So I'm just going to commit this, got the express hello world working. So this is going to be live on GitHub right now. You'll be able to get it for yourself. After I've signed off, I'm going to add a README to show you, just to remind you how to get this thing up and running if you want to try it for yourself. And we're going to come back to this tomorrow and we're going to move on. Just a reminder of what we're doing. If we go back to the to-do list, we can actually check off some of these things now. So we've got our hello world running. We've created a code repo. We've got our hello world web server, REST API up and running. That's done. So in the next session, we're actually getting onto the real work of being able to kind of have an API where we can post an asset, a way to retrieve an asset using a HTTP GET request, and a way to get all the assets using a HTTP GET request. So before we finish up for this session, I just want to plug my book again. Let's go back to the main page for it. To be an efficient and productive developer, it's not enough just to be quick at coding. You have to also be able to write code that's reliable and valuable. If you are good at making code that is reliable and valuable, you can code slowly and you can still outperform many other developers. So you're going to learn how to do this with my book, Rapid Full Stack Development. You can subscribe on the webpage here for infrequent updates, or you can follow me on Twitter at CodeCapers for more frequent updates. We're going to continue this tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me.